In January of 2019, my husband was diagnosed with a brain tumor. It was in a completely inoperable part of the brain, and was told me had 6 months to live. He stuck it out and died in October, 3 months longer than he was expected to. He was always positive, and decided a few weeks after his diagnosis that he would write letters for our daughters for significant events in their lives. My husband was my soulmate, and the past few months have been difficult knowing I've lost him. We have 2 daughters, Mia, who is 21, and Imogen, Imi, who is 19. All 3 of us have become a lot closer since their dad's death, and we've all really struggled. My husband and I were together since we were children. Got married when we were 18, and we were approaching our 20th wedding anniversary when he passed. In February of this year, Mia got married to a boy she's been with for about 6 years. I absolutely love her husband, and he's been incredibly supportive during all of our grief. My husband wrote a letter for Mia to open on her wedding day. It's worth noting that my daughters were unaware of these letters. It was my job to give them to our daughters. Her wedding day comes around and I just can't bring myself to give her the letter. I read it and just wanted to keep it to myself. I had his handwriting and his words, and it felt like he was there, and I couldn't bear the thought of giving that up yet. I was fully intending on giving her all the other letters as the events happened. Last week, Mia and her husband bought their first home together. They'd been living at our home since they got married, and so had a lot of stuff to pack and move to their new house. Mia asked me where her important documents were, passport, birth certificate, etc. So I told her they were in my top drawer of my dresser in my bedroom. The only letter that was in there was the one I was meant to give her on her wedding day. The rest were hidden away. She immediately recognized his handwriting, and of course it was addressed to her, so she read it and broke down. She came and found me and started screaming at me, asking how I could be so selfish. I didn't really know what to say apart from the fact that I wanted to keep it and she could take a picture of it. Both my daughters called me an asshole and are convinced I'm keeping them from a load of their dad's stuff. I am a 51 years old male, and I have 3 children, 1 girl, 1 boy, and 1 child is gender neutral. My son Eric is the oldest, Eva is the middle child, and Charlie is my youngest. I'm still very new to the whole LGBTQ thing, so please correct me if I say something wrong. Now sadly, when the children were all young, their mother / my wife passed away in a car accident, and I've been raising them by myself ever since, as I've chosen to never remarry since my wife was / is the love of my life. I'll say I'm definitely not a perfect father, but I've done the best I could to raise my children. Now Eva has always been a bit more wild than her other siblings, even before her mother's passing. I've tried everything, ranging from having sit-down talks with her to putting her in therapy, as well as taking parenting classes and reading books to see what I could possibly do to help. Therapy did seem to help a little bit, but decided to stop soon after she turned 18. Now let me tell you the story as to why I'm here now. My daughter Eva still lives with me and Charlie as she goes to school, and has definitely been home more due to the pandemic, but has started to go out more now that they are letting up on some of the regulations. Now I was out getting dinner with an old high school buddy of mine when I get a panicked call from my son, who had been at my house hanging out with his siblings. To summarize what he told me, he got into an argument with Eva and Charlie sided with him. Eva became very volatile and even called Charlie a slur, which is a big hell no for me. So I headed home and tried to calm everything down. I told Eva I didn't care about what they had been arguing about, and that she wasn't allowed to disrespect Charlie or Eric like that. Me and Eva ended up now being the ones to start arguing, but I soon shut it down when I realized it wasn't gonna help. I forced her to apologize and took away her car privileges until she could learn to respect her siblings, and I thought it was the end of that. Well, the next morning after work, I ended up coming home and finding scraps of papers all over. At first I didn't get it, but then soon found out that she cut up about half a dozen letters her mother had written me when I was much younger. I was livid. I know it was her because I have a couple cameras in my house. I just walked into her room and told her to get out. She was smug and rolled her eyes, but then I yelled, "Get the out of my house," and she realized I was serious. She was crying and screaming, but I had felt sorta numb at that point, and she left with a friend of hers. But now I feel like I was being too harsh, but I want to stand my ground. She did know about the cameras, but they're really just there for my dog. My husband and I, both in our early 30s, have been together for over a decade and made the decision to not have kids. I like kids, I have nieces and nephews, we just don't want them for our own reasons. He had a vasectomy, which only a few people know about. Our families are aware we don't want kids, as they've asked this before during different major life events, our wedding for instance. We recently bought a 3-bedroom home with a nice yard in a nice area. Excited to show our new home to family and friends, major upgrade to our previous home, we hosted a housewarming. During the party, one of my sibling-in-laws, Alex, made a few indirect comments about all this space. And kids would love it in our house, etc. Eventually they asked point blank when we were having kids. I made a light-hearted joke about it, which is my go-to for this question. Oh, well, I like sushi too much to have to give it up for a pregnancy. Plus not drinking for pregnancy and breastfeeding? No thanks. I tried to make it very light-hearted and laugh it off. Most people just laughed along. That seemed to anger Alex, and I was told children are a joy, and a good mother puts her kids before everything else. I agreed, children are a joy, I like spending time with the nieces and nephews. And obviously I can't be a good mom if I chose sushi over kids, so I just won't be a mom, paraphrased. Still trying to brush it off in a gentle way, because I'm not trying to start a fight by telling them to stop asking in front of everyone, because I know my tone will be seen as rude and abrasive. We move on. But Alex is still annoyed and making little comments in their group about how flippant I am about it and how when it finally happens, then I'll understand. My husband heard this and jokingly said, well, if she gets pregnant, that'll be a problem for the divorce lawyers. That seemed to piss them off more, but they stopped. With holidays coming up, we have not been invited to Alex's usual Halloween bonfire. When husband spoke to his parents, they told him Alex was annoyed we were so careless and callous about our child-free status and to say what we did, and they realized we had taken permanent steps to ensure we never had kids. That we know they had to do if to have kids, etc. And we are AHs to just not care. I feel bad because they did do if and lots of fertility treatments to have their kids. And even then they still had a few miscarriages. I can't imagine wanting kids and struggling to have them and then deal with miscarriages. But at the same time, I'm so tired of justifying living my life how I want. I feel terrible my joke was taken the way it was and that I hurt my IELTS. I truly never meant for that to happen. After the bonfire this weekend, we will be reaching out to have a heart-to-heart, if they'll accept it. Either way, I'll be apologizing for hurting their feelings, let them know I love their kids and them. But I will also be firmly putting down any further attempts to discuss our child-free status, if the conversation is about changing our minds. I have not told them our reasons for being child-free, so I think perhaps if they are willing to listen, I'll explain them and hopefully the conversation can be constructive. 2 years ago my house burnt to the ground after being struck by lightning. Thankfully it was during the day, so our 3 kids were at school and my husband and I were at work. We lost everything, but we were safe. It took almost 11 months for the insurance to pay out. The insurance covered 1 month worth of hotel stays, but after that we were made to fend for ourselves, and the only option we had was to move in with my SIL. She tells us we can have her spare room and her office space. Since she used neither of the rooms, and her stipulations was we needed to purchase all of our own food and pay her $100 a week. By week 3 all of that changed. She then decides we need to pay her $250 a week and we can only use 1 room. So all 5 of us were crammed into the smallest room she had, which was the size of a glorified closet space and didn't even fit a twin bed and a small dresser. So we lived out of trash bags and slept on the floor for close to $1,000 a month some months, and still had to purchase all of our own food, despite her claiming my children on her food stamps. She also had no bills outside of her land tax, $450 a year, electric and heating oil, which she hardly ever filled. So we were essentially paying her so she could do leisure activities. It was the worst 8 months of my life. 3 months ago my grandmother decided that she wanted to go to assisted living after a fall and transferred the deed of her house to me, and basically said it was mine now. It is a 5-bedroom farmhouse. My boys insist on sharing a room, so we have 2 extra bedrooms. Well, my sister-in-law lost her house last month due to not paying her land tax for several years and asked if her and her stepdaughter could stay with us until they get enough money to move down south. I said sure, 1 bedroom, $800 a month, and you have to buy and cook all your food separately because my daughter is vegan. She looked at me like I had 10 heads and said that she and her stepdaughter should not be made to share a room when there are 2 extra rooms, and stated she cannot afford a rent of $800 while purchasing all of her own food on top of it. I said, neither could we, but we managed to cram 5 people into a glorified closet space while you were getting $1,000 and food stamps. Take it or leave it. She decided to leave.